Check it out. It's the Laugh to Learn podcast. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Laugh to Learn podcast. This week, I am coming to you one day late because this is being recorded on Wednesday, the 27th of February in the year 2019. Now, I held off on this delay because this is going to be a big episode. I was waiting because today there was a whole hearing in the Canadian House of Commons that we are going to get to later for our main topic today, all about the Liberal Party and the Trudone government and stuff we've been talking about for weeks, and I am so excited to get into it. But first, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do, and I want to talk a little bit about another story, and then we're going to get into that. So stick around, and thank you. Thank you for tuning in again. Our numbers have been going up and up and up, so please share this podcast with everyone. Once again, I'm not accepting any ad deals until I have a ton of people listening to this podcast. That's all I really want, is to be out there and heard. I'm not really worried about making money on it, so let's just share it everywhere you can. And for those of you who don't know, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Paveo. That's JACOB PAVAO. You can also follow me on Instagram. I definitely use Instagram nowadays more so than Twitter. On Instagram, it's at Jacob_Paveo, and you can follow me there and follow along with what's going on for the show in both locations. I post updates in every episode. I let you know when it's live there. Generally, I come to you every single Tuesday. And I really want to get a standard intro because every week I kind of change it up. Maybe I should write one for the next few weeks. But this is what's going on with me. So I've had a whole bunch of feedback, so thank you if you've reached out to me. There's a whole lot of people. Keep using the contact page on the website, www.laughtolearnpodcast.com. I probably should have started with that. You can reach out to me on Twitter. You can reach out to me on Instagram. And so far, because of how small the show is still, most listeners, I'm pretty sure, are within like 1 or 2 steps of being able to contact me directly by phone or Facebook. So to everyone who's reached out in those means, thank you. And I just want to cover a few things that people have asked about. So first of all, the logo is the number one thing people have reached out to me about. I understand that it's been taken down from Spotify, and it's come down from a few other services as well. So far, I can't see anything from my end for why it's been taken down. I know it's showing up as just a black square, so I think I'm just going to redesign a logo, change it, and upload a completely new logo. It seems like that's probably the best choice. I did reach out to Spotify. I got a generic response back saying to look into my RSS feed. As far as the other podcasting apps, I've found a few where I'm getting a black square, and none of them you're able to reach out to. Like, they don't have contact pages or anything. So I talked to Podbean, who is my gracious podcast host, and they really don't have ideas on why it's not there, because it shows up on iTunes, it shows up on Google Play, the podcast apps that I have on my phone, the image shows up. It just seems to be something to do with Spotify and apps that draw from Spotify, because if you're not really aware how podcasts work, basically you publish to an RSS feed, different websites pick it up, and then apps pick up the podcasts from those other services. So it's kind of like this weird family tree looking thing, and it seems like everyone who takes off the branch that is Spotify is not picking up my logo. They're just getting a black square, including Spotify itself. So, if you notice the logo change, that just means that it finally worked, hopefully. But look for that in the coming week or two. I hope to have a new logo out there as well. I've seen a whole lot of people asking me about YouTube, and a few people have reached out to me directly. And I want to let you know that it will be happening. So I am going to start publishing on YouTube. It's going to be a static frame. I'm not going to be setting up a camera. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm way too lazy to deal with editing video right now. Not that I'm lazy, I just don't have time. So maybe one day I'll have this wicked awesome permanent setup where I can have, cameras set up, and I don't really have to worry about editing video. You can just look at me talk. But, I don't set up a mirror in front of me, so I can't watch me talk, so I don't really want to watch me talk. I don't really know why people want to watch me talk, but people listen to me talk, so I guess it's kind of one and the same. Maybe one day we'll have video, but for now it'll probably just be the static logo. I have a YouTube channel set up for it. I have the name and everything. But like I said, it's going to take a little bit to get on YouTube. And I have serious concerns, actually, with YouTube. So I listed a few just to get... I want to be as upfront and honest as I can be. Number one, the view count on YouTube makes it super difficult to pull in new users. So typically, users on YouTube only click on videos with higher view counts, which kind of makes sense. We're all guilty of that. Like, if you see someone talking about something with, 100 views, which is right around where I'm at right now for podcast listens, at least, 100 views is not a video you're going to click on. So beyond that, the lower your view count, and if you're not monetized as well, especially, it actually doesn't recommend your video for other people. So for no one who's ever searched my podcast, it'll never show up. So basically, I'd be publishing to YouTube for people who hear about it by word of mouth, which I'm totally cool with, but it really doesn't help me expand, whereas podcasting apps actually share new podcasts with active podcast listeners when they use the search function. And that's much more cool. Like, I'm much more in line with that. But the search algorithms nowadays are really bad. That's actually one of the big reasons why my last podcast didn't go anywhere, is because it was only on YouTube. And YouTube just sucks now for helping new creators. They just don't promote new creators. And lastly, I kind of touched on it already, but monetization. If you're not monetized, they don't promote you at all. Like, not at all. And other people have been using YouTube's content ID system to flag videos and make money off your video. And there's, especially if you're a small creator, there's nothing you can do about it. And it's just screwed. Like, if I start publishing videos and people are just spamming me with content ID, which I know a few different creators that it happens to, I'll pull it right away. I'm not doing this for free so that someone else can profit off me. So I have serious concerns about that. As well, I'm going to talk about things that YouTube has been not only demonetizing, but banning accounts for. And if YouTube bans my account, I'm kind of worried about Google Play, because it's the same company. So it's strange how, Google Play will let you publish basically anything as a podcast, but YouTube won't. And I'm a little afraid of getting those two mixed together, where if YouTube's not okay with it, will Google Play be okay with it? I don't want to be taken down from podcasts for people who have been listening so far and hopefully will listen into the future, and lose YouTube simultaneously. That would be not pleasant. But either way, I will keep everyone up to date on that. Look for YouTube in the coming few weeks. Look for the new logo, likely before I get onto YouTube. And I will be uploading every single episode on YouTube. So if you're sharing it with people who are asking about YouTube, or if you yourself prefer to listen to podcasts on YouTube, which I get, I used to do the exact same thing. Now it's more difficult for me, but definitely when I was in college, all of my podcasts came from YouTube. So I totally get it. And I'm going to put it up there because people have been asking for it. So look for that. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, share this podcast with your friends. Let's get it going. Let's get the numbers rising. Now, this will be a different episode than normal, and there are two big topics this week. So, first of all, I'm going to cover the Jussie Smollett. I'm going to pronounce it Smollett, but that's probably because I'm Canadian, and that's how I would be told to pronounce that last name, but I have no idea how he pronounces it. But honestly, I don't care, and you'll find out why. And I've been holding off on this one for a while. I texted someone last week and asked if they thought I should discuss my opinions, but not enough information had really come out yet, so I held off because it was probably better judgment to hold off and not talk about it publicly and not state my opinions in case I was wrong, which I wasn't. But we'll get to that in a second. And then the big story of the week is going to be the Liberal Party's debacle over the Quebec-based engineering firm that we have been discussing over the past few weeks. Could this be the end of Trudeau's leadership? What's going to happen to the party? What's going to happen in the election? This week has been crazy. There are so many things I want to talk about, but I'm going to keep it to these two. And next week, I'm going to bring up Trump is having a meeting right now. He's actually sleeping, but soon with Kim Jong-un. They had dinner earlier today. As well, Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, is testifying in Washington. I'm probably not going to cover that next week, but I wanted to bring it up just to say I looked into it. It was kind of boring, but I do want to cover the idea of hearings in the House of Commons in Canada and in the U.S. House and Senate, because I just find this stuff so interesting. I want to talk about it next week and my general feeling on it. But first, stick around because I'm going to get into Jussie Smollett in just a second. I'd like to do something a little bit out of the ordinary here. I'm going to insert a bit of a content warning because there is a fair bit of profanity, especially in the next story. It is, of course, the story of Jussie Smollett is a racist and specifically anti-gay story. So I did put in the language that he says was used towards him. So some people may find offense to that. If you do find that offensive, don't complain to me about it, but I'm warning you ahead of time. So I think that, as I'm sure I will talk about at one point in time, I believe that profanity is actually something missing from our vernacular. I think any banned words are like the idea of Voldemort in Harry Potter, and it just doesn't make sense to me. But that being said, this is not the place nor the time for that. So quick little insert here in post-production, but enjoy the episode. Ooh, I am out of breath and I haven't even started. I drank way too much caffeine before this podcast, which I actually seem to do a lot of. But on to Jussie Smollett. So in what is becoming the main topic of discussion in a week where we are expecting, as I mentioned, Robert Mueller's report on Donald Trump, as well as the second summit between Orange Man and Rocket Man, Jussie Smollett's recent allegation that two white MAGA hat-wearing guys had attacked him in Chicago has been the surprising top news story of the week. So last week, I really did want to discuss this, but I didn't want to be a little bit controversial. I didn't want to go over the top with it, so we postponed until now. And boy, do I enjoy getting to tell my friends I told you so, and I have a lot of people that I got to say I told you so on this one. So in case you're not aware, I'll cover the entire story, but Jussie Smollett claimed that on January 29th of this year, he was attacked at 2 a.m. while leaving a Subway, shout out to Canadian food chains, as I mentioned earlier, by two white MAGA hat-wearing honkies. Now, he claimed they yelled, "This is MAGA country, bitch." That's, quote, "This is MAGA country, bitch." And initially said, "Hey, you're the fag from the Empire show." Now, he alleged that the two men beat him to the ground, poured a bleach-like substance on him, and tied a rope around his neck that was knotted like a noose. Now, these are crazy allegations, and were they to be proven true, this would have been a horrible story. This is the reason that I didn't want to talk about it, because if this was true, this would be one of the most insane hate crimes to have happened in a while. 2011, there were charges for a lynching, and that was the last time that a racist hate crime was so blatantly conducted in the U.S. Perhaps aside from the neo-Nazi who ran over a counter-protester at that neo-Nazi march, I believe it was 2017. I mean, these things are few and far between nowadays in the U.S., so this type of thing is just, it's crazy to think of, right? It's crazy to even imagine that this could happen in the West today. This is what you think of, like, these are the type of acts that happen in the Middle East between Muslims and Jews kind of thing. Like, it's that violent. It's that out of the ordinary for us. So, needless to say, it was taken very seriously. Police met him at his apartment 45 minutes after the alleged attack, at which time he was still both covered in bleach and had the noose around his neck, claiming that he had been upstairs crying for 45 minutes, and that's why he didn't report it earlier. Now, this past Monday, he was arrested and charged with filing a false report, and if convicted, he will do a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 3 years in prison. And he was also fired by the production studio and had all of his social media advertisers pull their support. And this was the point in the story where he said he had been crying for 45 minutes and came downstairs covered in bleach and with a noose around his neck. When I heard the initial story, he was explaining it, I think it was on MSNBC, but I could be wrong about that. That's where I called bullshit the day the news broke. I have a knack for the extravagant. I like podcasting and yelling loudly and driving a shiny car and having my picture taken and making sure everyone knows what I think. So I can see a shot at attention for what it is. No one, and I mean no one, gets bleached and noosed only to go inside their apartment and, according to him, cry for 45 minutes in those same clothes, not even taking the noose off, and then phoning for police to help. I can't even say it without laughing. It's the lamest plot that an amateur writer could draft. He's an actor on Empire, for those of you who don't know, and that it's just, you know, it's like a shitty high school play that was written by a student. And that's exactly what it was. Not even to mention, it was 7 degrees Fahrenheit, which is minus 14 degrees Celsius at the time. And that's according to O'Hare Airport in Chicago. And these two men, according to Jesse, however he wants to pronounce it, these were Trump fans that recognized him from Empire. Now, I've actually watched Empire before, and I recognized his face when I saw him. I was like, oh, shit, it's that guy. But I would not have been able to pick him out on the street. I wouldn't have. Like, straight up, Empire is a show that I have seen a number of episodes of it. Couldn't pick this guy out of a lineup. Couldn't point him out on the street and say, oh, that's the guy from Empire. And maybe that's just me. I don't know. But I really don't think that two apparently avid Trump supporters would have been able to do that. I can guarantee you, in fact, two things. One, that there are most certainly Trump supporters who would beat Jussie Smollett up for being gay, and that those two individuals most certainly do not watch Empire, nor do they know who Jussie Smollett is. This fabrication fell apart because he was so cocky and so full of himself that he thought the cops would believe that two anti-gay, racist Trump supporters would watch the blackest show with openly gay characters on television. He's a fucking idiot. He's an idiot. Not to mention that these two men had to be walking around downtown Chicago on a Tuesday at 2 a.m. with a bottle of bleach and a noose, waiting for this actor or for some, a gay black man to walk by just to beat him up and mess with him. It's a ridiculous idea. Every fact he gives just makes me at least, want to slap him harder. And for an actor, he absolutely sucks at making up lies. That's why he's acting and not writing. He really needs writing friends. That's his problem. He took too many acting classes and not enough writing classes. Like, you can't... I don't know. It's a horrible script. It's the type of thing that would have been thrown out on page 2. Any director would have been like, who the hell is going to believe this? It's just stupid. And the worst part of this story, really, is that he paid 2 aspiring actors to buy the rope and bring the bleach and stage the attack. And had there been 2 white guys in the area, which luckily there weren't 2 people that could have been blamed for this, but Smollett would have likely taken this to the bitter end and testified and put 2 innocent people behind bars for up to 40 years each. And for what? Well, it has come out now that he felt underpaid, and that he believed, and in fact he knew, that this sort of attention would likely lead to a pay increase for his next contract with Empire, as well as more movie and television deals, not to mention things like commercials and book deals and the TV campaigns. He was already interviewed twice after this happened, before he was proven to be a liar, right? So these sort of things in the modern day, they're big for celebrities. This sort of thing, if it happens to you, it's like people feel so bad for you. And in the day and time of the internet, people latch onto the story and they don't let this sort of thing go for a long time. And you can really benefit, right? If this actually happened to him 5 or 10 years from now, that would be the poor, innocent, gay black man that was beat up on the streets of Chicago. And look at him now, he's winning an Oscar, right? That's the story that any director or writer wants to try and craft, because it's a real life story that they can use. And he's not stupid. His manager went along with this, right? His manager said, "Oh, we were on the phone. I heard the whole thing." Meanwhile, they were on the phone for 20 seconds. It's scary to think that it happened this way. It's scarier to think that this garnered so much attention because of who he was. And we know now that this happens. And I can guarantee you, there are innocent people, and I'm not just talking about innocent white people, right? There are innocent black people in prison because a white guy said they did this. Innocent white people because a black guy said they did this, or brown people. It doesn't matter. People make up bullshit charges all the time, and it actually ruins lives, like real lives. He literally tried to steal 80 years of 2 other people's lives for financial benefit, right? 40 years each. And I believe he should be given a sentence on par with the charges that he was attempting to place. The moral of the story, I suppose, is that when staging attack, at least drop the Subway sandwich on the ground, you moron. Because, of course, he walked back to his apartment with a fully intact Subway sandwich. And that's what the fuck he was doing for those 45 minutes in an apartment. I have no respect for Jussie Smollett or anyone who's defending him. There's a few people, especially on CNN, actually, who are still defending him and saying that, well, he said, because he now says he's a drug addict and this and that. And I'm off script now. But it just disgusts me. You can't defend this. That you absolutely cannot defend this. I wouldn't allow it. I wouldn't allow that opinion that this is somehow defendable. I understand he may be a sociopath, and he probably needs serious help. Like, someone like this needs serious help. But that doesn't excuse it. You can't excuse it. You can't defend it. The best thing I guess you could say is he's just crazy. Like, there's something mentally wrong with him. He's crazy. He couldn't have possibly understood what he was doing, but I really don't think that's true. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. He's super intelligent. You don't get that to that level of stardom. He was a solid B-list celebrity. And that's not throwing shade. Like, that's a big deal, right? I'm like I'm past the alphabet. I'm like, if it goes A to Z and then you start through like 1 to 2, I'm like on the 1,000 list of celebrities. You know what I mean? I'm like, so this guy's a B-list celebrity. He's getting paid like mad money. And he threw it all away because he wanted more, and he tried to screw over 2 people and play the card of black and gay. I hate it. I hate that. And I have no respect for him. Absolutely none. On to the next. Whew, I need to calm down after that one. I would like to take a minute to remind everyone to please share the show with all of your friends and family. Don't forget you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter at Jacob Paveo, Instagram at Jacob_Paveo. My name should hopefully be in the description for this show. I'm still working through descriptions. I got a message from iTunes earlier today. I needed to change the episode names of all my shows because I had episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. They asked me to remove that, so I did that, and they asked me to make some changes to descriptions, so I got to go through and do that. So a lot of work for me to do behind the scenes, but you should be able to find my name down there. Also, if you go to laughtolearnpodcast.com, www.laughtolearnpodcast.com, all spelled out, not using the number 2. I repeat, not using the number 2. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, there's a link to Instagram as well as Twitter. You can just click the little bird for Twitter, or I don't really know is it a camera, I guess? It's a camera. What am I saying? It's a camera for Instagram. That was the saddest, non-millennial thing I've said in a very long time. As well, just a reminder, YouTube, I talked about that at the beginning of the show, coming to you soon. Logo change is impending. Thank you. I see everyone spreading the podcast everywhere, sharing it in your stories on Instagram, posting it on Facebook. I've seen one share on Twitter. That's awesome. Thank you for spreading the good news. Keep sharing it everywhere you go. Let's do everything short of the Jehovah's Witness strategy and get this podcast out there now. It is time for the big story. Is Justin Trudeau going to soon be Justin Trudone? Well, things certainly aren't looking up for our potentially short-term prime minister who is facing an election this fall with some disastrously low numbers. Of course, the last 2 episodes, I've given updates on the ongoing debacle with the Prime Minister's office and now the former Attorney General. So for this story, I've decided to break it down like this. First, we are going to go over a timeline of what happened so far. That's going to be the majority of it, and it's quite long. So you'll have to bear with me, but it's super interesting. Seriously, if you are either any Canadian should be listening to this, or even if you're not a Canadian but a fan of politics and you're really interested in politics, this is a big scandal, people. Like, bigger than anything that you've seen come out of the Trump camp in a while. This is a big deal, and I'm really excited to get into it. So after we go over this timeline of what happened, we're going to talk about the Prime Minister. These are all my opinions of the Prime Minister, I should say. The status of the Liberal Party of Canada, and where I believe they stand in 2019, specifically with the Liberal Party. And finally, I will close with any impact I believe it will have on the election this fall. Of course, I'll be adding in my witty comedy and adorable attitude throughout for your enjoyment. So, without further ado, let's get to the story. Now, for this, I'll be using a timeline composed by Kady O'Malley. It's Kady O'Malley from iPolitics. So please head over there, read along with me, give her a full read, give her the click if you are interested. So this all started at some point in September of 2018 when The Prime Minister and his, at the time, Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, discussed SNC Lavalin, the Quebec-based engineering firm that we've been discussing, which was under investigation at the time, and they're under investigation, as I'll mention in a little bit, for fraud and bribery in Libya. And the Prime Minister told her, quote, "Any decisions on matters involving the Director of Public Prosecutions are hers alone," end quote. Now, for context, SNC Lavalin had been lobbying to pass legislation, which was eventually passed, which would protect corporation executives from receiving any sort of criminal punishment for actions overseas. SNC Lavalin was under investigation at the time, as I just mentioned, for bribery and fraud by company officials in Libya, and this would subject them, under this new legislation they were trying to push through, only to civil actions such as fines or license contract suspensions, meaning the business couldn't, perhaps the business couldn't actually apply for new contracts, but none of the executives could face criminal charges because in this case they would have been facing jail time, and I should say if they are to be found guilty of the charges pressed against them. Now, on September 18th, 2018, Lavalin, I'm just going to use Lavalin moving forward, representatives conduct 3 different lobbying meetings. All of such meetings in Canada must be logged to a public registry, and this is how so much of this information has come to light. You're going to hear me talk about these meetings a lot. The meetings were held with the Finance Minister and his Chief of Staff, the Deputy Finance Minister and his Chief of Staff, as well as the Assistant Deputy Minister, that's one meeting with 3 people, and finally with a Privy Council Clerk and a Secretary to Cabinet. Honestly, I'm removing names out of this because I will be talking forever if I bring in everyone's name, but we're going to talk about the names that really matter. So a second meeting, not that they don't matter, they're all like super powerful politicians, but you get my point. A second meeting was held days later with the Deputy Finance Minister and his Chief of Staff, as well as the Assistant Deputy Minister. It really makes you wonder, or at least it made me wonder at this point, reading this story, how important all of these roles really have to be. At a certain point, you have a minister, a deputy minister, and an assistant deputy minister all having a meeting with the exact same company on the exact same day. It's like, what are you all doing? Just shouldn't one of you have this meeting and move forward? But as the Prime Minister once similarly said, it's 2019, and I guess everyone needs a job in 2019, so we'll make up titles. Not that they're the first ones to do it, but it's just a joke when you really start looking through and reading about this stuff. Now, it should be pointed out that any lobbying meetings we know of, we don't actually know the context. I already mentioned that they have to be recorded and made public that these lobbying meetings occurred, but they don't have to necessarily tell us about context, although I must admit we know some of the context, which we'll get to in a little bit, and it certainly looks like these discussions were centered around the active investigation, or at least the attempt to pass legislation protecting them from criminal charges. Now, on October 10th of last year, Lavalin issued a press release stating that the company had been, quote, advised by the Director of the Public Prosecution Service of Canada that at this time they will not invite SNC Lavalin to negotiate a remediation agreement. So at this point in time, the new legislation had passed. So company executives could be offered a chance to negotiate remediation agreements instead of facing individual criminal charges on top of charges against the corporation. Now, Lavalin added that they were this was put out by Lavalin to shareholders, of course they're publicly traded, so they added they were strongly opposed to the decision and remained open to negotiations, closing with the fact that they were now entering a time of financial uncertainty. So that's really bad. Their stock started plummeting, and I believe they're down 45% as of yesterday, being Tuesday, the 26th of February, from where they were in September when this all started. So that's huge. They've almost lost 50% of their value. Now, on October 11th of 2018, Lavalin representatives met for another lobbying meeting, this time going all the way up the ladder, with Prime Minister's Office Senior Advisor Elder Marquez to discuss, quote, justice and law enforcement. So this meeting appears to be clearly in retaliation for the decision the day before that was made by the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. So just to quickly recap, at this point in time, public prosecution has said your executives are going to face criminal charges. A day later, they have a meeting with a direct advisor to the Prime Minister to discuss justice and law enforcement. So they are clearly trying to persuade the federal government to bend to their will, to not press criminal charges and instead keep it in civil remediation. So for the next few weeks, there would be 5 more meetings with high-level ambassadors. The ambassador to the United States was lobbied, advisors, ministers, even the CEO of Atomic Energy Canada. And the finance minister, I should say, was also included in one of those 5 meetings, and we will get to him later because Mr. Bill Morneau could be in a whole lot of trouble. Now, the final meeting of these 5 occurred on November 19th with the finance minister's chief of staff. Since then, there have been no meetings recorded, at least, but by what I understand, they must submit to public record any meeting within 4 weeks. So it seems like they've given up on that tactic, but if there's been any meetings in the last 4 weeks, they may have not been made public record yet. So that could come out in the future, but I'm operating under the assumption, since there hasn't been one since November 19th, that they are no longer having these private lobbying meetings. Now, on October 19th, Lavalin filed an application for judicial review to try and overturn the decision and allow for a remediation agreement. So I should make it clear here that remediation would mean a fine and no chance of jail time for any executives involved in the Libyan bribery and fraud. So this is a big, big deal. They've essentially given up on asking or trying through lobbying to get the federal government involved in the case, and they've gone directly to a judge to ask a judge to override the prosecution's decision and allow for a remediation agreement. Now, yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. So on December 5th, Raybould, who once again at the time was the Attorney General, brought up the case in a meeting with the Prime Minister's principal secretary and, as I mentioned last week, my personal favorite Liberal Party employee, Mr. Gerald Jerry Butts. He also has a fantastic last name because it's Butts, and poor guy growing up. According to a spokesperson, he advised her to talk to the Privy Council and gave her no further advice. Now, if you've nodded off, this is where you need to wake up, because shit gets real in January. On January 10th of 2019, Treasury Board President announces his resignation from federal government and his retirement from politics. Now, this was a very strange move, seemingly out of the blue, and the media did not eat this up because at the time we knew nothing really of this case. There was nothing to look into. And yeah, like, no one really picked up the story. No one looked into it. So he was able to get out of Dodge early, seemingly. Now, until that is January 14th, 4 days later, when Prime Minister Trudeau announced Raybould would be moving from Attorney General to Veterans Affairs, which, for anyone who follows politics, that is a clear demotion. You're going from being essentially the top of law enforcement in Canada to Veterans Affairs, which is by no means an unimportant job. One of the most important jobs still in government. Of course, you're responsible for taking care of our troops when they come home from healthcare to employment to housing. It's super important, but a clear demotion, right? Being the top cop is a much bigger deal than being the head of Veterans Affairs, head of the VA. So she would go on to make a strange statement that in her role as Attorney General, she acted as both Justice Minister and legal advisor to Cabinet. Now, this isn't wrong, but it's not exactly the role of AG in Canada, and she stated as well that she always spoke truth to power. She made it very clear that she always spoke truth to power. She wasn't upset about a demotion or anything when asked, but it was still a very odd statement for an outbound Attorney General, or a demoted, really, Attorney General. And she closed with, quote, "This is how I served throughout my entire tenure in that role," end quote. On February 7th of this year, the walls began to cave in. The Globe published a story which we've covered here on the show stating that, quote, "unnamed officials," end quote, "had urged her to press the prosecution to abandon the court proceedings, and that she was under heavy pressure to change its mind," it being the prosecution, "on the decision it had made not to allow for a negotiation towards remediation." Now, the party heads have stated, that being the Liberal Party, of course, that this was unequivocally untrue, and that Raybould then issued a statement that she couldn't comment as she was acting as a legal advisor at the time, essentially to both the Prime Minister's office and the prosecution, which, again, isn't incorrect, but it definitely raises some eyebrows. Now, over the next few days, several investigations would be launched by the House, and meetings were set up for the following weeks to question those involved, both in both public and private hearings. But on February 11th, Trudeau came out and stated that Raybould's continued presence in Cabinet speaks for itself, and an investigation was welcomed by all involved parties. Yep, he said it. And then a few hours later, in a private meeting with her, she submitted her resignation to him. Dead serious. He stated that all you need to look at is the fact that she's still here, and then literally, once he gets off camera, this was in BC, he flies to Ottawa, roughly, 5-6 hour flight, and then she quits. That is a real oh shit moment in politics, and I love it. I love when stuff like that happens, because no matter how much you support someone, when they make a statement like that and then they're clearly like just screwed over, right? It's a beautiful thing. So the next day, this happened late at night. Late at night, she submitted her her resignation, I should say. The next day, they would announce her resignation publicly, and Trudeau and other top ministers said that they were quite disappointed and surprised by her decision. Now, since then, Lavalin has been very public. Once again, going back to the beginning, Lavalin is the Quebec-based engineering firm, has been very public about its displeasure here, seemingly blaming opposition parties, that being specifically the Conservative Party, for placing it in the middle of a political hockey game that's, quote, a political hockey game, end quote, as the CEO stated to Canada.com's finance writer. Now, today, the reason I delayed this podcast is because Raybould testified to the House, and you have to watch it if you haven't. It's incredible. It's maybe the most impactful thing that's happened in Canadian politics in a very long time. Specifically, she stated that, quote, "For a period of approximately 4 months between September and December of 2018, I experienced a consistent, sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere," adding that it was, quote, "an inappropriate effort," end quote. At the moment of publishing this podcast, she added that she received verified threats and ultimately resigned because of the demotion that was given to her from Attorney General to Veterans Affairs. And all I have to say is wow. I mean, seriously, wow. So, I'm going to get on to my opinions of what this means for politics now. So, first of all, I'm going to talk about the Prime Minister. Now, I voted for the Liberal Party by extension, because in Canada, of course, we have a parliamentary system, so you don't vote your leader directly. But by extension, I did vote for Justin Trudeau, full disclosure. And I've been very vocal in the past on different podcasts and when I was on college radio, very upfront that I am a liberal voter. But holy shit, he is Trudone. Seriously, he's done. I have no idea how you come back from this. I mean, you just look at the facts. Like, she is being blatantly honest. She, as I talked about last week, she acquired a former Supreme Court justice to give her legal advice in this, because she was worried that if she made a statement that it could come back to haunt her, that she could say something that was deemed to be illegal, of course, because she was the Attorney General. So it was a whole legal loop to get through, and we got through it, or at least she got through it, and now we know that specifically, Bill Morneau, our finance minister, is a dirty politician. And we know that a lot of money has been, I suppose, donated to the Liberal Party by Lavalin. They're a Quebec-based company. Their local politician in federal cabinet, or rather in federal politics, their local member of parliament is a Liberal, and they are an international company that donates tons of money to the Liberal Party. And they wanted to get their way. Now, the finance minister, a lot of people may question why the hell the finance minister would get involved in something like this. Well, they have a huge impact on the Canadian economy. And Trudeau's government is proposing in this summer, we know they're going to be proposing to do a ton of infrastructure work. It's going to be a big part of their platform moving into this fall, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the finance minister wants that to go through, and Lavalin would be a major part of that. These guys are a huge engineering firm that would put together a huge contract for the Canadian government. We're talking billions of dollars that Lavalin could make from this, and hundreds of jobs, perhaps even thousands of jobs across the whole country that they would create. I mean, the federal government's creating them no matter what, but Lavalin would oversee all of these jobs in infrastructure, building roads and bridges, etc., highways. And Bill Morneau is specifically interested because these guys are a huge part of that. And as the finance minister, you want the Canadian economy to do well. And if a Canadian multi-billion-dollar corporation folds because of executives being arrested, and of course, this has already impacted their contracts in other countries because, you know, they do sign contracts with actual countries, right? It's not like the Trump Corporation wants them to build a tower. No, this is like the government of Libya wants roads built and they need an engineering company. They're paying millions and tens, hundreds of millions of dollars for this company in different countries around the world. And it's messed up that the finance minister needs them to survive this much, but he really does, because they can cause major drops in the economy. They can cause major unemployment around the country. They employ, the number's not in front of me. I think it was a few thousand. I think it was roughly 4,000, but I could be pulling that number out of my ass. I believe it was 4,000 employees in Canada, and then tens of thousands of employees around the world. So even still, 4,000 employees primarily in Quebec. And then when they sign contracts, I mean, they easily have 100 people working on every road or bridge construction project. So they are a big deal. And Bill Morneau wanted them to survive a little bit too much, it would seem. And he could be going to prison. But the Prime Minister seems to have protected himself. He never directly got involved. His best friend is, of course, Jerry Butts, who was his one of his top advisors that stepped down. He seems to have been somewhat involved in this. We have to imagine that there's going to be some major blowback to the Prime Minister, and I think he can't protect himself from this. Now, the real question is, moving on to the Liberal Party, what happens moving forward? I was talking to someone earlier today, and I really don't know what we're going to see. Are we going to see the party stick with Trudeau because he seems to have kept his hands clean? Even whether or not he directly knew what was going on, I can't be certain. I really can't. I want to believe that he likely wasn't aware, simply because of the statement he said where if she, just look at the fact that she's still here, right? When he says that, you have to believe he really thinks she's not stepping down, and he probably thinks, he hopefully thinks that she is someone with integrity who would have stepped down had anything bad happened. So, he may actually have his hands clean. Why he demoted her, he was hopefully told to do so by his advisors who knew what was going on. But I think in reality, even as someone who is a huge supporter of his, I have to come to terms with the fact that he was probably, he has to have known what happened. He really does. And he screwed up. He really did. He allowed money to corrupt him. And that's what happens to, it seems to be what happens to all politicians at a certain point. And it's just pathetic. It's pathetic and sad. He's a multi-millionaire. He just wanted to keep that power. And he probably would have walked away with this election this coming fall, even without Lavalin. They could have folded. It wouldn't have impacted his election. But they get stuck. Politicians just get bogged down by these smaller issues that they make to be much larger than they actually are. And it's just sad, really. It really is. So what I would like to see happen, and this is just a shot in the dark, I'd like to see Raybould run to lead the party, because the ones in power would hate it. It would be a huge mix-up to the party, and I don't know that she would win. I don't think Scheer is actually a formidable opponent. I think he's actually a rather poor politician by what I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them. I think he's weak in the House of Commons. I think he's too inexperienced. He doesn't have an air of I'm not really sure what the word is. He's not the kind of person that when he starts talking on camera, you stop and listen, right? And you think of leaders like even ones who, looking back, you say like, yeah, probably not the greatest leader, right? Someone like Chrétien. When he talked, everyone stopped and listened. Harper was the same way. I'm not a fan of Harper, but when he spoke, he had a way of controlling the room, and that's something that Trudeau knows all too well. He's very good at, and I'm not talking about looks, but at getting attention on you, like at getting the camera to focus on you. And it's something when you look south of the border, like, why did Donald Trump destroy Hillary Clinton? Because he's the one you want to watch. He's the one you want to listen to. I don't think Scheer has that in him. I just don't. I don't think he has it. So he's not formidable. And I think that Raybould actually would have a chance, but I'm not sure what she looks like in front of the camera. That's just like a shot in the dark. That wouldn't it be crazy if the one who took down Trudeau actually decided to run for party leadership and won the whole thing? That would just be absolutely incredible. I also think the Liberal Party, since I'm specifically talking about them, need to be concerned about the PPC, Maxime Bernier, and the People's Party of Canada. He's been doing 2 tours of large American podcasts. He should come on mine, but he probably is too close to the election now to even try. But I'm sure a little while ago I could have actually done that. He did some real small podcasts. But he seems the type that has great ideas but just doesn't have the party. It's just not organized yet. He needs better organization. But, if Butts and Raybould were to join the PPC with Bernier as a leader, which I'm not even saying that I think would happen, but Jerry Butts is a political genius, and with Raybould, who is clearly anti-Trudeau government, clearly does not get along with shear all that well, the two of them could be quite the force come election season. And now to get to the election itself, because at this point in time, I mean, if you asked me 5 weeks ago what I think is going to happen, I would have said the Liberals are going to lose some seats, but probably hold a small majority, maybe even slightly short of the majority with a large minority government. They would sweep. I would have said they would have swept Quebec, Northern Ontario, the East Coast, most of the West, being BC. They lose a few seats to the NDP in the middle of the country, but it seems like they've taken those seats over. The NDP is probably going to have like under 10 seats. That should all go to the Liberals. And then the Conservatives would take a few in Ontario, probably a few on the East Coast, but not a lot. Probably end up with 55 to 70 seats, and the rest would all go to the Liberals. But now I have no idea, because I'm looking at this and thinking, like, I don't know if I can vote for Trudeau. I want to know if he knew what was involved here. You know what I mean? I was a protest vote in the provincial elections because I would not vote for Kathleen Wynne. I would not vote for Doug Ford because he's not his brother. And the NDP I would never vote for. So I wouldn't vote Green Party either. Both parties just not organized enough right now, not even close. I also knew that the Conservatives were going to win the provincial election. I live in a very conservative district, so like I said, other than I was a protest vote this past one, but other than that, I've cast a Liberal ballot, and every time it's a Conservative sweep, except federal elections, because my district, our federal election was a 35 ticket difference. The Liberals lost by 35 votes. So your vote counts, people. Get involved. 35. And I know a lot of people that listen to this are from my area. I'm not going to say the specific city I'm in, but you know who you are. If you guys didn't vote in the federal election and you're from this area and you're a Liberal supporter, literally 35 votes. You can look it up. So crazy close. Get out and vote when it comes time, and we're definitely going to be talking about this moving forward. But for now, I would like to thank you for your time. I've rambled on for 56 minutes. It is time for me to publish and go. Thank you for holding out with me this one day. I know I'm sorry you all wanted me, but it was worth the delay, I think, to hear what Raybould had to say to Parliament today. And once again, thank you. So don't forget to share the podcast. 5 stars on iTunes would be so much help. Please and thank you. Rate it. Share it with your friends. Share everywhere you can, even on social media platforms that I'm not cool enough to be on. Even though I will never know it's there, you can send me a message and be like, yo, I shared it on, I don't know, Squeeble. That sounds like that might be some weird porn thing, so don't Google that. But if you share it on Squeeble or something else that I have no idea what it is, or that kick, whatever, if you can share things there, I actually don't know what it is. Share it everywhere that you can, and don't forget to come back. I will be here next Tuesday for sure. There's no reason to delay next week. Thank you. Our numbers, like I said, are going up, and it's so awesome to see. I hope you enjoyed today's special episode. I'll be back to 3 topics next week, most likely. So unless this does really well, maybe people only want 2 topics. Give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me. And as always, I will see you next Tuesday.